Listen to the radio. Harry and Edna's want to show you heard it from the Three Bells.
What-o, Harry?
And what-o, Edna, and welcome to Harry and Edna on the Wireless, where we're going to have a look through the steamed-up monocle as we have an idea of what's going on in the current vintage scene. I kind of mucked that up, didn't I?
You did. I was wondering, have an idea, you mean? Have a look at the vintage scene.
We were talking about grammar.
We were, literally, just as we came on air, we were talking about something we read that was from a press and PR that had terrible grammar. And there you are, launched into terrible grammar. Just to highlight what we were saying. Grammar ain't what it used to be.
It certainly isn't. But we're going to guide you through the current UK vintage scene as we broadcast on the Solent facing dear old England. Is that better?
That's better, yeah. Is that because you stuck to the words that you've got written down? Yeah.
Yeah.
What-ho?
Artie Shaw. Now, is that correct grammar?
It is. Oh, he started again.
Well, he was just saying that was correct grammar, and I just give you a little bum-diddy-bum-diddy-bum-bum-bum.
Okay, that was just his seal of approval, was it, that you got that right?
I think so.
Yeah, well, well done.
So.
Well done, you.
So, welcome to Harry and Edna on the Wireless, and we have a treat for this programme, do we not?
Indeed we do.
We have an author joining us on the telephone, and this is Mandie Bedsitt. What are you sniggering about, young?
This is ridiculous. Sandra Bettetets. I was just chuckling at your spelling of the surname. Is that why you just... Because she has a pseudonym of Mandie Bedsitt,
yes,
so let's stick with that,
It's actually Sandra. That's what it was. It was a.k.a. Sandra.
No, it wasn't that. It was the little dot Sandra Bettetets. Or whatever you've put. Anyway, that's irrelevant. So she's called Mandie Bedsitt.
The trouble is, unless our wonderful listener was looking at our running order, they won't have a clue what you're talking about.
I know, but
here.
To me, it made me chuckle, and you asked me what I was chuckling at, therefore I had to elaborate. I'm trying to get my grammar proper, because we have an author on the show.
What Edna's really saying is she really would like to be on TV where you can do visual gags, and rather than stuck on the radio.
I'm not. I love being stuck on the radio, and it's not stuck.
It wasn't the other day you were telling me and you could do Jeremy Kyle.
No, that's the one show I would avoid like the plague.
I would like it. I could go, and here is somebody who is doing something that shouldn't do something. And
we'll all shout and argue. Do you know what? There's enough of that in life. I don't need to watch a TV show with that. Anyway, we're going off on a tangent.
Yeah, I should do, because anybody outside the UK probably don't know what the Jeremy Kyle show is, so I'll just really explain.
Do you know what? No, you don't need to know. It's fine.
If you know what Jerry Springer is like, which is an American
that's years
show.
Ago, isn't it?
No,
Jerry
he's still
Springer.
going.
Is he really?
He's going in America.
Really?
You can watch it on YouTube.
Really? Wow, there you go.
He's the British equivalent, Jeremy Kyle.
But not quite as entertaining as Jerry Springer.
No, but Jerry Springer has out and out an entertainment show, and you know it's all a bit make-believe. Whereas Jeremy Kyle, I'm sure it's probably just the same, actually. Or maybe not, before we get sued.
Yes. Anyway, so let's move on to the
to Mandie Bedsitt,
because we are cultural tonight, and we have an author on the radio on the show.
Well, joining us on the telephone.
Yeah.
She's written a number of books about going stealing the thunder, and she's written some based around the 1940s, and we're going to find out all about that. In fact, shall we play a bit of Roy Eldridge? See, I'm very good, and this track is called "Knock Me a Kiss."
What-ho?
Harry, what we forgot to say was the first track, Benny Goodman, was called Let the Doorknob Hit Ya, which I remember a few shows ago we were talking about tracks and the naming of tracks and how they don't name them like they used to.
No, because the grammar was appalling.
No, I know. We're having a very sort of grammar-themed night tonight. But while I'm on that sort of vague track, I was very chuffed to have some really grand vinyl purchases this week. Do you know what they were?
I don't, but I'm surprised you went out purchasing said vinyl, because those of you who have ever been to Harry Edna HQ will know an entire wall of our studio is either shellac or vinyl.
I know, and so
And
I
we
felt
have
the
piles.
need to.
We have piles and piles of records that people have been very kindly given us that we still haven't quite got round to listening to.
I know, and I know we have piles of 78, so I thought we needed some more vinyl. But what happened was I was in a charity shop and they had this massive vinyl collection, so I had a little peeky through and I found some Geraldo and some Harry Roy and his orchestra. Was it Harry Roy?
Yes.
Yeah. And Benny Goodman. And there was some Glenn Miller. There was some amazing vinyl in there for £1. It was a bargain, and you know what it's like. I dragged myself away.
I understand those tracks, but you have slightly. There seems to have been somehow. How did this thing called ABBA? And I can't even spell ABBA right because one of the B's is facing the wrong way round.
It was ABBA's greatest hits. I couldn't resist it for £1. So I added that to my vinyl, my non-40/50s vinyl collection. But hey, it was £1 and I was supporting a good cause. And
Aha!
You can't beat a bit of ABBA and a bit of Mamma Mia and such like.
Oh, you can.
I know. We were, our great chum Claire from House of Foxy, we went to see her the other week, and me and the children, her children and my children, were all singing ABBA at the top of our voices, to which she was shouting, no, all the way through, because she wasn't an ABBA fan, unlike me and her children.
I am surprised, actually, because talking of children and their musical taste, we basically play music from 30s, 40s and 50s, even at home. That's what we like to listen to. And that's what our children grew up on. And the other day, for some reason, we have a couple of cars that got fancy music systems, which we can't operate, but somehow the children have managed to take control of it from their mobile phones. And they were playing, was it Guns N' Roses? And I'm thinking, where did this come from?
I was in the queue waiting to get a ferry across the Solent, and Guns N' Roses blasting on their stereo, which was not my choice. But somehow the children managed to take over the radio, which, well, it's not a radio anymore, is it? It's like a multimedia playing system thing.
And we couldn't turn it off because we didn't know how to.
No, and the cheeky monkeys were turning it up.
And that was it, and they're controlling it from their phone. But we're not talking teenagers here, are we? Well, one is.
One, yeah.
But we're talking 6, 12... and a 14-year-old somehow managed to develop a musical taste, which I just don't know where they got it from.
It's not our influence at all. It's never played
Guns
in the
N'
house.
Roses.
Never played in the house.
And one of them likes Phil Collins, which really baffles me.
Yeah, I think the West family are to blame for that one. But it baffles us how our children can dominate the radio in the car without our knowledge.
And they don't put on any Glenn.
I know. Maybe they just want a bit of rock. I had to turn the whole thing off because it was just too loud, too noisy.
You see, I'd understand it if they played the Boswell system.
What ho?
My name is Mandie Bedsitt, but I write under the nom de plume of Mandie Bedsitt, and I've written 3 novels, the third of which is called Is Love Enough? The book it's a chick lick. I write unashamedable chick lick love stories, and it's about a couple who've been married for the most about 16 years, and they are just kind of reaching that point in the marriage where they're sort of distracted, let's say.
Okay.
Sam is my heroine, and she has opened up a vintage style tea shop in, I placed it in East Cowes, with a vintage shop next door selling all sorts of things, primarily concentrating on the 1940s.
What ho?
Yeah, about 5 years ago, I left the diplomatic service and I came to settle. Well, we already lived on the island, but we settled on the island, and I began knitting. And I already knitted, but I started knitting and going to craft fairs mainly as a way to get myself back out, into the world again and do something. And I met a lovely lady called Jane Reed, who is known amongst reenactors on the island, who runs a vintage fair, and she said to me about knitting for 1940s reenactors, because there are a few people who do knit, but who charge quite a lot of money, and she suggested to me that if I could knit some original knitting patterns in a modern yarn that was an affordable price, then there would be a market there. So that's basically how I started with the 1940s reenactment scene. I mean, I've always been very interested in 1940s anyway. Yeah, so I've got loads of old knitting patterns, 1940s, and started looking really into the clothes first of all and knitting up. And then I started going to the 1940s fair, the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. I usually have a stall at Kelbourne 1940s weekend, and started chatting to the 1940s sectors group here on the island, you know, getting involved in that sort of way.
What ho?
You are listening to Mandie Bedsitt. Mandie Bedsitt started off telling us about her book she's written based on the 1940s, in her own words, a bit of chick lit. However, she then went on. The bit we missed out because we had a bit of phone interference was when Edna asked why did she get into the 1940s scene, and that's why she was telling us all about her knitting. Anyway, you're listening to Harry and Edna on the wireless via the radio, which of course is the only way to listen to Harry and Edna on the wireless. But you can also listen to us on demand over and over and over again if you wish. Just go to harryandedna.co.uk and you can either do the on-demand internet streaming, which has all the lovely tip-top gramophone tunes, or you can do the podcast version, which is basically just us chatting, because due to contractual reasons on downloadable podcasts, we can't include any of our music. Anyway, Mandie Bedsitt will be back with us in a 2 seconds, straight after Gene Goldketter and his orchestra in the track called My Pretty Girl. And I'm pretty certain Edna is going to find out about this 1940s novel that Mandie has written.
What ho?
Sticking on the theme of knitting, because I'm always intrigued at this.
Yeah.
Is it sort of building up the collection of vintage patterns? Was it something that you then sort of went out scouring all the charity shops and internet for?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, my first real big thing was that I saw an advert for a lady who was selling, she'd done a house clearance and she was selling a load of stuff in house clearance, and I thought, and she had some, I think she was selling knitting needles and bits and pieces, and I thought, oh, get in contact with her and go along and see what she's got. And I had a little suitcase, this tiny case, it wasn't a suitcase, it was like a little vanity case. She said, I've got some knitting patterns, and I just opened it up and I saw on top there were a few knitting patterns from about 1950. So I said, okay, right, I'll give you some money for the case. As I drove away, I thought, I've bought, I paid too much for this. When I got home, there were about 150 knitting patterns from the 1930s, 1940s and 1950s, which were an absolute gem.
So you struck gold there then?
Yeah, so I hit gold,
Yeah.
But more than that, I mean, they are worth money these days because there is a market for them, because they're becoming increasingly rare. More than that, they are just such a piece of history. By the way that the model dresses, the way that she has her hair, the way that she's standing, there's so much more to the way that they're written, the size of the paper, the printing of them tells you so much. You can date them from the size that they are. The small ones are from the Second World War when paper was rationing. Sometimes they're printed in different size fonts because they wanted to squeeze on as much information as they could. Sometimes they left out chunks of information that modern knitters might need. So you have to be experienced and read between the lines on what they mean you to do, because they might not repeat every single line of the pattern. It was just absolutely incredible, and I started getting into it in that way. That's where my interest sort of started from then, and then actually creating these things. And the joy for me is seeing them being worn. I go to Isle of Wight Steam Railway. I bore people because it's like, that's my jumper. And it's lovely to see them coming alive. I feel as soon as somebody puts on a jumper, it makes them alive.
Yeah, so do you have one that's an absolute favourite that you get asked for time and time again?
Yeah, there's a little one. We actually did some research and I found out the name of one of the models. Here's time and time again on a lot of the knitting patterns. Her name was Peggy Chesterton. And she was married to an RAF pilot, and he was in a prisoner of war camp in Germany for quite a long period of the war. She wears this little short sleeve, because most of the cardigans were short, diamond lace pattern on the front, and that has become my signature knit now. So that's the one that I get asked to knit time and time again, because it's just so 1940s style, very sweet and very dainty, short-waisted, little puff sleeves, absolutely gorgeous.
What ho?
It must be such a joy for you to be able to tie in your love of 1940s with your writing. Do you have another book planned that you're going to do on the 1940s, or are you now thinking, I'll go off in this direction and this era?
This was a story. My books tend to, what I'm doing is featuring on different ladies from a group of women in each story. So they all the books kind of tie in together. There are certain events in the books that happen in each book or remarked upon in the book, but they are standalone. So this particular one about Sam and her husband Jim is a standalone book, although it does feature a couple of characters from my second book. My next book that I'm writing at the moment is actually about Gibraltar, about a couple from my second book go to Gibraltar. It's about love story there. That's because we lived in Gibraltar. At the moment, we've got links with Gibraltar. No, certainly down the line, I may come back to, I'm already thinking about some of the other characters in the book that I could extend upon. I mean, I've actually featured myself in the book, so if you do read it, if you look at Susie the Knit, that's me. I put myself in there as somebody who knits things and 1940s style clothes and sells them in the shop. So, no, but yes, certainly down the line, that I think I could take some of these characters and use them in other books as well.
Because you've had an amazing story yourself. There was a time when you couldn't write at all.
That's right. I was in a diplomatic service 15 years. We were in Algeria at the time. I was posted to Algiers and I had an accident. I bashed my head. We didn't think it was very much at the time, but as time went by, there is every possibility that I had a stroke through a brain bleed, but was never picked up. For a long time, I couldn't actually read a book. I mean, I loved reading before, but I was a bookworm. I devoured books. I mean, my first book was a cheat. I had written it many years ago. It's gone on the back burner. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to publish it. And I got some good reviews from it. It inspired me to write my second book called Hello, Hello. It took me 3 months to write, and it absolutely exhausted me because I find writing quite difficult. I suffer a bit from aphasia. I don't always remember the words. It's a struggle to remember what I'm writing. So I went on and wrote Is Love Enough? Now, Is Love Enough did actually take me 6 months to write. It took me a lot longer. It's given me such a morale boost. And not only that, since January, I've actually been reading again. I actually sat down with a book and started reading, and I've read it all the way through. I remembered, the characters. I mean, I can't remember complex characters. I can't remember complex plots, which is why I don't write like that. So actually sit down and want to read a book and actually remember when I turn a page over, what's happened on that page was just absolutely incredible. So, it goes to show that even after 8 years, I'm still improving.
What ho?
I'm sending 20% of my royalties to Headway. I'm also giving £1 for each paperback copy that I sell, because I've now got my books in More Than Words, in Shanklin, Old Village and Pencil Cottage, and going to put them into East Cowes Vintage Emporium in East Cowes as well. The reason why is because when I first came back to the UK after the accident, which was about a year after the accident, my doctor recommended that I spoke to Headway. They are the head injury charity. I couldn't quite handle the meetings at the time. I found them absolutely tiring. Fatigue is one of the biggest things that I suffer with, even now. But the organiser, Joy, she was mine. She just said, when you're ready. But for about 6 months, she phoned me every single month just to make sure that I was all right. I don't have to make apologies. I don't have to say, I'm sorry, I've already forgotten your name, or have we met before, because I don't remember if I met you.
How do our listeners get hold of your book?
If they would like a Kindle version, it's £2.50 and they can order that from Amazon. If they want a paperback version, they can order that from Amazon as well. I will be at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway on the 7th and 8th of July for their 1940s weekend, selling my books as well as my knits. And the same for the 1940s Kelbourne event on the 12th, I think it's the 12th and the 13th of August as well.
What ho?
And I was just saying, that track's... Oh, it's ended.
I didn't really get much time to realise that one had ended, bless you.
It did do. Now, when you're on the phone to young Mandie Bedsitt, did you hear me trying to fix the car?
Yeah. What on earth were you doing outside with all those noises?
We should confess that was obviously recorded a few days ago. And for some reason, there was a gathering of people in their souped-up cars. Well, they're not really. They're just like old, sort of like Fords. And they seem to take off part of the exhaust, so it made them really, really rough and vummy, which is a pain because we have triple glazing here and it's still got through.
Do you know, the funny thing was, it was really quiet, wasn't it, up until the minute we rang her up, and then suddenly every man and his dog descended in their super souped-up broom cars, just, as Harry says, despite our double glazing on our boat in the middle of the Solent.
It was just the way it goes.
It is. It's called the law of something.
It certainly is. So, when are we going to be playing ABBA on this show?
I thought you banned me from playing ABBA ever in your presence.
This is true.
I'd love to.
What on
Harry
Edna on the
medley
wireless?
Going, sing along. We could have a sing along ABBA show.
Well, you're getting into the real danger zone now, because is the 70s vintage?
I know. Your era is vintage already.
What do you mean?
I'm just teasing you, and you're giving me that look as if to say, do be quiet, dear. I could play some of my Geraldo and his orchestra on vinyl. How about that? Vinyl treat. Next show.
I would like that. It does mean we have to wire up the what do you call it? The
wire
thing that spins round.
Record player.
That's it.
Yeah, the thing that fascinated our children.
Oh yeah, if you listen to a previous show, you'll hear us talking about how they were fascinated when we actually got a record player. Now, they used to wind up gramophones, but for some reason this I think it was because it was playing more contemporary music, absolutely flummoxed them.
We've got a great photograph, haven't we, at Christmas, of them all three just staring at this record player with a disc or the vinyl going round and round and round. It was really quite fascinating, but it was actually a joy to see your children enjoying something that you loved as a child.
But this is even more controversial because you were playing some 90s. You were playing the Oasis brothers. Yeah. And they were not doing big band.
I know they weren't doing big band, but it was quite frightening when your children, I think, can sing along to songs that you listened to as a youngster, and it just feels like you come full circle.
And this is where we get very controversial because, again, some people do say the 90s are now vintage.
No way. No way. Can we recreate, was it Euro 96 and that nostalgic feeling of the country just being so optimistic?
3 lines on the shirt.
Yes, it was a great time of optimism that year.
Paul Gascoigne almost getting the, it wasn't the equaliser, just putting us ahead.
Yeah, and just the sheer nation being behind football. Even we were into football, and we are seriously not football fans at all.
Actually, I was just trying to think, there's a load of people out there probably going, who's this Paul Gascoigne fella?
I know, just Google him. Google him. Google Euro 96. Google country, time of optimism and, hope in our future.
Do you think they know who this Frank Sinatra fellow is?
Oh, gosh, I'm sure everybody knows who Frank Sinatra is.
Do you think so? So we should play some Frank Sinatra to jog people's memory. What track are we going to play?
Well, you need to guess geographically where this is, I think.
Yes, because there's one bit we've forgotten before you say it.
Oh, it's not time for goodbye already, is it? Oh, my goodness, time has flown. So it's a toodle pip from me.
A ting-tong from me. And why is it geographic just before we go?
Well, because Frank Sinatra's singing East of the Sun and in brackets and West of the Moon. So where does that place him?
What ho!